Hello, everybody. It's Lynne Haggerman here to bring you a very, very special treat. I have my friend Cathy O'Brien, and we're going to be visiting today about all kinds of topics. And I believe that everyone is familiar with who Cathy is, but I did want to take a minute to honor her, to honor you, Cathy, before we get started. I met Cathy about 3 weeks ago. We did a show together with Nino, which should be out soon. And since then have just been become good friends, emailing away. But I wanted to honor you, Cathy. I did this on Nino's show, but still, you mean so much to me. So 2 or 3 years ago, when I call it social isolation, when I was still healing before it was time for me to come out and speak. And I'd been socially isolated and healing for about 15 years. But 2 or 3 years ago, I heard you for the first time. And I went to your website, which is for everyone, trance-formation.com, and I bought your books. And so I wanted to make sure everyone saw those because I recommend all three of them. PTSD, Time to Heal, helped me immensely. Um, Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, which we all know is a joke. And Trance, her book too. So those are the three. And what was really special to me too, Cathy, was you wrote a note back then, and I saved it with the books. And, uh-huh, and you said thank you, and you said you wrote on there peace and freedom. And praise God, today I have peace and freedom, and you've been such an integral part of that. Of course, I've listened to many podcasts. I read your blogs. I think I've read all your blogs and studied them because you have so many tips for healing. So I thought we would talk about that today too. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. And that was really sweet. Speaking out for over 35 years on mind control and healing from it did put me in kind of a pioneer position of bringing this information out because I was so fortunate to have healed from within. Back then, people didn't even know what mind control was. They didn't know there was a swamp in Washington, D.C. And yet I had an intelligence insider who was preserving the sanctity of free thought, lifting my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp and handing me keys to my own mind and reminding me that it's within us all to heal. And it's so important for everyone to know that we've been blessed with the ability all along. We don't have to look outside ourselves. We don't have to give our power away. That power has already been taken. We need to take it back, and heal from within ourselves. So fortunately for me, I had that kind of support so that I could begin speaking out on my daughter's behalf because my daughter was caught up in the corrupted child protective services. And it was an absolute nightmare. And I needed to draw attention to her situation in order to help her. It's a good thing I didn't need people to validate my experience when I began speaking out. Having healed from within myself, I knew my own truth. I was absolute in it, and I was able to stand strong. So that, wow, yeah, here we are, over 35 years later, and there's this mass awakening, and people are waking up everywhere from varying levels of mind control, varying levels of abuse, varying levels of mind manipulation, even school indoctrination or media indoctrination. We all need to remember who we are, why we're here, take back our power. And Lynne, I honor you for having done that for yourself, for being so strong, for being able to make a positive difference, shining your light so other people can find the path forward too. So
that's right. Well, I definitely, when you say you a pioneer, you are the pioneer that blazed the trail, and you've been blazing it ever since. When we first met on Nino's, and I see this on podcasts, light and truth just absolutely radiate from you, radiate, and love for people. And that's what drew me to you. That's what's drawn because I know you've helped many, many people come out of this trauma and into the light and be able to speak.
Well, you and I met very briefly in person,
Yes,
and I remember so well the hug because it felt like, okay, this is something that's going to go more. It's going to be more. It's going to blossom into something, and yet there wasn't even time for us to barely finish the hug at that particular event. It was a very busy
yes,
one in Ohio that Scott McKay put on, and it was
yes.
quite a lineup of amazing people in a very busy event. But still, it's so good when people like us meet and have that depth of recognition and knowing and understanding. It's a beautiful thing.
It is beautiful. And I remember the minute that we met too. And I when we were on Nino's show, I'm sure you felt this too, but I felt like a power and a force come together when the two of
Yeah,
us were speaking, because there's power in numbers. And the more of us when we're ready, and I heard you loud and clear from your books too, don't speak until you're ready because
right.
you get triggered and go back into isolation. So wait until you're ready. But once you're ready to speak, you know, nothing can hold you back, right? It's just
Exactly.
it's true.
And all of the survivors need to bring their own piece of the puzzle to the table. And, when we put all those pieces together, we get the big picture. We get a clear view of what this is all about. Whereas if someone speaks out before they're ready, they're still highly suggestible, easily led, and oftentimes will parrot what others have said in order to be understood, and it's so much more intricate than that. And it's why it's so important people heal fully first, because wow, each one of us has such a powerful piece of that puzzle to bring to the table and make a comprehensive view of what has happened to us, and ultimately that healing is possible. Every one of us is an individual that has their own personality and everything else to bring to that table. And it gets confusing sometimes when survivors speak out too soon, and then they can get misdirected. You know, others will see their vulnerability and jump in on it in a heartbeat and start directing them to attack other survivors, or that's a big one that's been happening for some time. But it's really important that people heal first and know who they are and why they're here.
So while I have you with me, I had some questions that you have this beautiful way of explaining. I was my trauma was I was so little, birth to 5 years old, that I've been working hard to find words, but I speak for the little girl in me. So a lot of times my vocabulary, I try to keep it simple because I'm speaking to honor her and all the little ones that didn't make it. But what I love is your ability to explain what happened what happened to my brain when I was going through all that trauma from birth to 5 years old. Explain explain that.
Yeah, the formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a classroom, military, the world. It's the same. Trauma is the basis of it. And that formula for mind control came into the United States in the wake of World War II through Project Paperclip. When we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US, with them came the formula for mind control. This is just pertinent information on how our brains respond to trauma that has been used against us for generations, when in fact, information on our mind brain function had been suppressed under national security, under secrecy, under these secret societies that, secrecy has been a problem all along, because understanding our own mind brain function is a truth that makes us free, and one that we all need to understand, because they understand that there's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. That's because it shuts down neuron pathways in the brain. It compartmentalizes memory of abuse, shoves it deep into the subconscious so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally. Well, after extensive trauma over and over, different traumas, different abuses, more and more neuron pathways shut down in the brain until there's no capacity for free thought, for conscious awareness, for the kind of um, critical analysis of information that we need. Instead, information just pours into the subconscious when it doesn't have a conscious mind filter. It just takes information in, twisted information, takes everything in. It doesn't have a filter, and it's necessary for us to have our conscious mind. Um, and by creating by shutting down that many neuron pathways in little children and allowing for the pedophile agenda to proliferate, because the pedophile agenda is a mind control agenda.
Yes,
So it's the satanic abuse of ritual abuse of little children.
yes.
It's also a mind control agenda. It shuts down neuron pathways, makes us more highly suggestible and easily led. And ultimately, this handful of perpetrators, these puppet masters with this secret knowledge, thought that they could have control over a global population by keeping their suggestibility heightened with trauma after trauma after trauma. So what happened to us as little children is happening to the whole population on a mass scale. But there's nothing more horrific on the human mind than doing that to a child while their brain is still forming, because then it takes, quite a bit to be able to reopen those neuron pathways and to expand our thinking beyond our own life's experiences, because what happened to us is not who we are. And we got to be able to have free thought and critical analysis, the ability to critically analyze and question and reason in order to gain that all back.
That's right. So whenever your book, PTSD Time to Heal, you give a lot of wonderful advice on what people can do once the memories come back. So and I know a lot of my followers have had trauma and of course are adults now. So can you share your information about how people can begin and go through their healing process once the memories start?
Yes, yeah. Like what my father did was wrong while I was an infant, and I didn't know what he was doing was wrong, but my brain did. So our brains have a way of responding to trauma, but they will also respond to being safe. So safety is a very important issue. That's why we need safe houses for survivors, safe houses for the little children, so that we can give them a basis for being able to heal. Because whether they realize they're safe or not, their brain knows, just like it knows when they're being abused. So that opens neuron pathways. And once those neuron pathways start opening back up, memory starts coming forward, that repressed trauma. And it's very important at that time to pick up a pen, or if it's a little bitty child, pick up a crayon and write it out, draw it out, because ultimately that takes emotionally incomprehensible trauma, shifts it over to the logic, critical analysis part of the brain, because it takes that part of the brain to move a pen. So it's activating that part of the brain, shifting information over, writing it out on paper in front where it can be consciously dealt with, and healing begins psychiatrically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, everything all at once, just by using that one little mind brain hack, that one trick. These perpetrators know the importance of that. That's why they took writing by hand out of the school system.
Yes, yes, I agree. I have because I was so little with my trauma, I have so many books where I have these absolutely horrific pictures that I've drawn, but they're drawn like a 3-year-old, not like I would do, but it's like the child in me comes out in those drawings and is able to, like you said, takes the emotion out and puts the logic in and process through that. So I hear exactly what you're saying. I love that tool.
Yes, well, we have the ability to photographically record the trauma. It's what happens when trauma occurs. We get this photographic aspect. So yes, it can be drawn out exactly as perceived as that little child. and it can be written out accordingly. Like when I would write it out, I would write it out from the viewpoint of a knee-high view, because I was a little bitty kid and that's what I
Right.
saw. And
That's right.
so we get the absolute photographic detail, whether it's written out or drawn out.
I have always believed, but I'd like your opinion. I don't think with all of their MK Ultra mind control techniques that they ever thought we'd remember. And if we did remember, I don't think they thought we'd be able to speak. And if we did speak, I don't think they thought anyone would believe us. But they thought wrong.
they always do, because they're
Yeah,
they're shallow. Their criminal
yeah.
minds think shallow. They don't have wisdom. They don't have that soulfulness, that depth, and that comes with the human spirit. They're not like us, and they don't like us, and their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit. They know that's where we win and where they lose, and that's what mind control is all about. They can't inhibit our strength of spirit. The only thing they can do is stop our ability to express it by stopping our ability to think, to bring it to mind. Without free thought, there's no free will. Without free will, we don't have soul expression. Without soul expression, we don't have a moral compass. We don't have our ability to live our life's purpose, to gather the strength of the human spirit and that infinite power of love to be able to live life as it's intended to be lived. So that's what mind control is all about. Ultimately, in that regard, it's a spiritual battle. But they're playing a battle of wits unarmed, because they can't relate to
Love
that
it.
strength of spirit. So they
Yeah.
lose, we win, and all we need to do is just remember that we have all the power, and they only have as much power as we give them or let them steal.
I know they do. They take it, they steal it, and I believe it goes back to what you were saying earlier. There's so much MK Ultra through the media and the public school
Yeah.
system that it's being allowed. So I had another question for you. Do you still remember trauma from your background? I mean, does this ever end? Do memories still come to mind that you haven't thought of before, that you haven't remembered before?
I don't really have that happening that
Okay.
way, but I did for many, many years, and I referred to them as dust pieces, because it would be a little
Right.
detail that doesn't change the overall memory, or affect dissociation even. So I don't dissociate, I don't trigger, and I have access to memory in a more normal way. It does not intrude on my present, but I certainly remember what happened, and I
Right.
can take a look back at something if I need to, or look for further details if I need to, but nothing um, at this point that is um, like that accesses the part of the brain that hasn't been accessed. I feel like I
Right.
have,
Yeah, you
yeah,
haven't.
full
Okay.
open neuron pathways, and they're firing just beautifully.
Yay, yay. So then, um, I have been in healing probably 12 to 15 years. I still, at times, will disassociate. It's a lot milder than it used to be. I still get triggered. It's a lot milder. So I love hearing you, because that tells me that, just like I like to tell people who've not started their journey or midway through, there is hope that we will we will successfully get through this, and and be able to be on the other side of this, because I've thought that, but I wanted to ask you about that because I see things getting better and better and better. And so I think surely there is an end in sight to those two
Yeah,
things.
there is. And when Mark taught me to wear a watch and watch my watch, so that I stayed consciously present and didn't dissociate, and didn't, and then if I did dissociate, I became aware of it,
Yes.
and I learned to have total control over that. And then it was like, oh, what made that happen? And I'd make a note of it, and take a look at it that that way, and that helped a whole lot to stop that dissociation,
Yeah.
and um and instead to be able to, just choose to relax the mind in a more meditative way where it's by choice and be able to look at things deeply that way. So there's a fine line that can happen on that, but it allows people to remember to write out their past without having to relive it because we already survived it. We don't
That's
need to
right.
relive it again.
That is right. That is right. Okay, I'm going to switch us just a little bit because you said something on Nino's show that I want to follow up with because I loved hearing it. I love any time to bring hope to people. So you were sharing about the borders, and I believe you said that you'd been talking to Tom Homan, and there are houses in the United States that are housing some of the children that have been brought across the border. Did I hear that correctly? And tell me about this.
Well, the people are helping people where the system is totally corrupted.
Yeah.
Access denied for reasons of national security tells marks in my journey through the corrupted system to help my daughter, who was thrust into the so-called child protective services. It's very, very corrupted. I watched that corruption being put in place through the Hoover building of the FBI in Washington, D.C., where my owner, Senator Byrd, had an office and was setting that up. Then my daughter was experiencing it. Now we hear from people all the time talking about the corruption within the system. Awareness has risen.
Yes.
And with that came people realizing the children cannot wait for the system to clean up. It's up to us to give them a safe place to be, a safe place where they can start their healing process. So it's people helping people. There's safe houses opening all across the nation. They're accelerating more and more at this point because they, like I said, they can't wait for the system to clean up. And Tom Homan is very much concerned for our children. He's not about, sometimes the media tries to portray him as just, wanting to send everybody back across the border. No, he's wanting to protect the children. He's wanting to protect the people, the ones, some who've been brought here have been brought here against their will. We got a lot to clean up and a lot to factor into the equation. And we got to factor mind control in because when trauma of that extreme happens, then suggestibility heightens, and that becomes a vulnerability that many perpetrators are catalyzed for. That's what pedophiles do. And, we need to realize that it's up to us to protect the children, whether it's the ones who came across the border or the ones in our own backyard or the ones in the school system who are being indoctrinated and sexualized. It's up to us. So that's happening everywhere. And I'm so happy to see it and be part of it and witness the acceleration of it. I've waited for it my whole life.
Yes,
and here it is.
That is so exciting. So with these safe houses, is that something if a person was interested in having one or contributing to one or helping, is that something that is it organized? I'm sure it's not by one person, or do they reach out to you or what? Because I know people are going to hear this and say, I want to help it. This is something that's actually happening, right? Because people ask, I'm sure they do this all the time too. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? So how can people plug into this?
There's so many different ways, and it depends on their own area. So there's not one central, oversight on it, because as soon as there is, somebody corrupts it every time. Like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a catch net operation for trafficked children that every state is forced to put up on their human trafficking website. So we got to get those national hotlines off the state, off our state help, and then get it down into communities and down so that we can take individual action. So with that said, it's people making a difference in their own community, looking and opening their eyes and seeing what's happening, or they can definitely reach out to me and see. Then there's places like the America's Future Project, the Defend and Protect Children that Mary Flynn O'Neill is overseeing, and we're able to say, okay, yeah, well, some they could probably use help over here, maybe here, or look at this church, or look at this organization, So there's ask any one of us that are working that. We just did a huge event down in Florida called Skippity Doodah, which
Yes.
is just about raising awareness, but also telling people, empowering people to be able to contribute and make a difference um, to these people helping people operations.
That's beautiful. So with the CPS, I know President Trump is poised to make all kinds of huge changes once he's in office. Do you know anything about, is he going to eliminate CPS? And do you know anything about that organization and what President Trump might be doing?
I don't know that yet. All I know is what Kash Patel said about as director of the FBI, he was going to close the Hoover building and turn it into a deep state museum. I know. Yes. An anti-trafficking museum, because ultimately that's what it was structured for. And the way they are structured, you get an FBI director, all the little FBI agents march to their orders, and all those FBI agents have influence over local law enforcement. They can step in on any case for reasons of national security. They can go in on court cases like they did my daughters, and 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 influence the whole child protective services. That's how it's been corrupted now for decades. And so we're taking a giant step forward, the way I see it, if we do close that Hoover building and do something. I don't know how we can do anything redeemable with the FBI. The whole structure's wrong. It's reaching into all the areas of human trafficking. And I don't see how that can actually be cleaned up. But how noble if Kash Patel went in there as director and eliminated his own job.
Well, it sounds
just
like
because I know that children are safe. Why, I don't know what could be more important. Ultimately, that's the goal of so much of what's going on with this administration, because President Trump has been against human trafficking and child sex trafficking since the mid 80s that I know of. The perpetrators I was around in the swamp in DC feared him back then because he so adamantly opposed it.
Yeah.
He actively, adamantly opposed it back then. And so that first thing he did was, close the border and expose the swamp, expose the drug and human trafficking, expose the child sex trafficking. It just such a grand wake up in that regard. And I'm seeing so much now come into place, even with RFK Jr. and the Make America Healthy Again attitude. We got to do that because a component of mind control is food deprivation. Because if they starve our brains, then we're more suggestible and easily led. Our food, that's why our food has been genetically altered. And all the bioengineering and stuff, so that it doesn't nourish our brains the way that we need it to. So we need to get that back. And I'm seeing, like the Joel Salatins and everybody coming to renourish the soil so that we can grow nutritious food again, and stop the hormones and the antibiotics and junk in our livestock. Nature has its own beautiful way of protecting, and we need to get back to that so that we can, feed our brains. So, ultimately, everything I'm seeing is due to the awareness of people demanding that we have our right to live life freely, the way that it's intended to, with health and our own amazing immune systems. I think they're finally getting big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult religion out of their lives so that we can start moving forward the way it's intended. So now, regardless of what government does and how long it takes them to do whatever they're going to do, it's up to us.
Yes, we won't care because,
we're empowered. We got it now. We got the obstructions out of our way. We're not going to be arrested if we go into the school system and say, no, you're not going to indoctrinate and sexualize my child, you know?
That's right. Yes, because that pedophile agenda is so prevalent in the public
Ah,
school system. I
yeah,
I wanted to go back, the food deprivation. I know your books, and it was true of me too, being denied food all the time. And I have a thought, and I was curious about your opinion too. It seemed like to me, for so many years, the three-letter agencies, including the FBI, did this trauma with the children. And I believe that's how they learned to eventually do the MK Ultra worldwide with the adults through the public school systems, the food supply, because I believe we were tortured to the level, because I don't even call it child abuse. It was physical and mental torture. And
yes,
I believe that they learned from us as little girls, little children, how to do this worldwide on adults to eventually, as you eloquently talk about, the new world order agenda. So you think that too, that they learned from us, because I know big pharma. I know when I was underground at that university medical center here in the United States, they were experimenting on me with drugs. And I laugh when I'm above ground. People say, oh, it's illegal to experiment on children. And I'm like, they've been doing it for a long time.
yeah,
And yeah, yeah,
yeah. I don't know exactly what it's going to take um, to stop it, but people are waking up from
yeah,
their own level of abuse. I think they were so traumatized with mind control masked as a virus that it
yeah,
gave everyone insight into what mind control really is. And knowledge is our defense against it. Once we understand it, we know what to defend against. We're not going to comply. We see what's
right,
going on and we don't go along with it. We evolve with that knowledge. So I think people are evolving with that knowledge from every level. And the formula for mind control is the same, whether it was of us as children or if it's of a nation or the world in trauma being the basis of it. You know, they use that trauma to cause the conscious mind to freeze in fright. And yet that horrific sexualization that we experienced was nothing short of torture
that
and
was,
trauma. It was not sex. They
no, it
cannot
wasn't.
say this pedophile agenda is a sexual preference. It's a control mechanism and it's torture. It
Yes,
is not. It is not a sexual preference.
yeah,
That's insanity.
it is insanity. And I think that they use that, you know how they'll take terminology to do part
Mhm.
of MK Ultra. So by calling, I believe putting the word sex in there, it somehow modifies the brutality of it. And then they're able to come in with their pedophile agenda and say sexual preference as opposed to physically and mentally torturing this child, most of the time around me to death because little ones can't take that. They can't take it. It's not, yeah, they couldn't take it.
Yeah, it's horrible what's been done and being done to the children, and how very slowly the population's been indoctrinated to accept it. You know, you go all the way back to Project Paperclip again, when we brought the Nazi and fascist scientists in, we brought in Disney. Walt Disney was associated with NASA. What is that? What's the common bond there? Mind control. The whole pedophile agenda has been creeping in on Disney from day one. You
Yeah,
know, the subliminally, slowly
yes,
conditioning the population, and then you know the population was indoctrinated in different ways. And after 3 generations, any abuse base, knowledge base, or belief system becomes autogenic in the brain. And they were wanting to create that autogenic acceptance of allowing this to go on. So now we've got people who are waking up from that. Soul is stronger than genetics. Whatever we've genetically inherited, we can overcome it when we
that's right.
consciously realize it.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and don't comply anymore.
Yeah,
So everybody needs to just understand what really happens to children
yes.
um, who are sexually
Yeah.
assaulted.
I have so today I'm a marathoner. I'm really athletic. And because I still do get the triggers and the body memories at times, the way my body reacts when I have a severe trigger, it thinks it's dying because it goes back into that trauma, because that physical and mental torture, when you're that little, my body thought it was dying each and every time because it wasn't sex. It was, I thought I was being killed, right? Because you don't know what's happening, but you know that, yeah. So even as an adult, when I'm triggered badly, my body in 2 or 3 days, I'll like lose 8 pounds of muscle, put on 8 pounds of fat because my body thinks it's dying. And I love explaining that to people because I really don't think, Cathy, that people get what this trauma does physically to the little ones. Because, and I think it's, again, it's because the word sex is put into it, and people have different connotations about that as opposed to, you know, actual torture, and the effect
Yeah,
on.
yeah, the physical abilities, and we have got such amazing resiliency of body, mind, and spirit, and we're able to overcome so much physical abuse when we consciously realize it. So we have a capacity for healing, I think, that
Yes.
is as a result of when you notice a body memory, you know that pathway in what caused it and everything, and it gives you a mind over body understanding that can then be reversed for healing and used in a positive way. But we go through the process in the meantime, and it's a whole lot easier to pick up that pen and paper and write out that physical and understand it that way, and then just take that understanding of mind, body function, and be able to use it for good.
That's right.
So
Right. And that's what I think we're doing is, um,
yes,
using this for good, helping people. It really makes my heart feel so happy to be able to share and educate and encourage and bring hope. Um, so I'm going to switch this again. Before we got on air, I was sharing how I lived in Springfield, Missouri, and then you were like, you know, Branson. So tell me, I recently was talking about Branson in a podcast just a bit, and my limited knowledge of what has been happening there. So tell me about Branson.
well, Branson was where the country music industry was moved to be closer in proximity to Bill Clinton's Mina cocaine operations. So the country music industry was totally saturated with MK Ultra, CIA, cocaine ops, um, especially during the 80s when that was the means of me being transferred all over the United States, the Caribbean, or whatever, was the country music industry. So I saw it up close exactly how it was saturated. And then they decided it would be convenient just to have it closer to Bill Clinton's, Mina cocaine operations, and brought it to Branson. So that's how that came about. It was also closer to the Swiss Villa Amphitheater in Lampe, Missouri. So
And talk about that too, because those words are, iconic in this area, but they're iconic in terms of entertainment, because Branson, and I've always known Branson is an anomaly. It's in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, was built this gigantic infrastructure with these theaters that house thousands and thousands of people in a town that was probably 2,000 population total, in the middle of nowhere, hard to get to roads, in the middle of gigantic Ozark mountains and forests. It just, it never made sense.
yeah, but entertainment industry, that's the key. It's the same thing with Hollywood. It's the same thing on the Disney. It's the same thing in any music industry. The people, the MK Ultra just is very prevalent there, and I think people are seeing it more and more. Now with the Diddy tapes, they've got more view into it. I noticed that on the lists of who's in the Diddy tapes, I see MK Ultra victims and victimizers alike. We need to factor mind control into the equation to see what in the world is really going on, because mind control is very heavy in the entertainment industry. So it's no surprise in understanding that aspect. It's in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. and access denied for reasons of national security. It's all over my blog, and everything else. How pervasive it is in the entertainment industry, because we need to understand that. And then when entertainers tell us, what we're supposed to think, who we're supposed to vote for, anything else, we're like, who are you parroting? We need to just re-examine this.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I follow you on X, and that reminds me of posts that you'll do every now and then of people, some in entertainment, some not, but with all the tattoos and earrings and things, and how you describe the trauma that someone's been through to do that sort of thing to their body.
Yeah, some people are making fun of them, and it's like we need to have compassion and understand what we're seeing here. I've got a blog on my website. It's called "Fake It Till You Make It," and it details all these different vulnerabilities that predators look for. They know to look for um, these displays of heightened suggestibility, these displays of trauma, these displays of depersonalization, and when people are, shaving their heads and, and or doing the purple hairs and everything, they're saying that they can't see themselves, they don't recognize themselves, they're depersonalized to the point of not being able to feel oftentimes. And that's when we start seeing all the piercings and the tattoos and everything else. And it's not saying that all tattoos mean that. It means that we need to start taking a look at people who are screaming out with their appearance to say, look at me, I can't see myself. And that's, yeah, there's a whole lot of that going on with the extreme appearances.
This is in your book too, but explain what you mean by they can't see themselves.
Well, there's a depersonalization that happens where people don't even think to recognize themselves anymore. They're operating on a subconscious level through compartmentalization, that has no continuity, because compartmentalization, if neuron pathways are shut down here, they're shut down over here. This part over here is not communicating with this part over here. And then, you just get this complete lack of inner communication and inner ability to even recognize self anymore on a conscious level. So there's like a subconscious screaming out of help me, look at me. And that's a lot of times what we see with that kind of depersonalization. We're seeing a lot of extremes of it at this point. And I think when, we look at the pedophile agenda, the depopulation aspect of that pedophile agenda went into the transgender movement because they can't procreate. It's a depopulation agenda on top of, it's horrific. And very often they scream out, like, I can't see myself, I don't recognize myself. It's a depersonalization issue. It's not a gender issue. When we masked up the kids in school, that caused a depersonalization while they're developing. And it limited oxygen to their brain necessary for critical analysis free thought. And it muffled their voices. It was horrible what we did for those years that we kept them behind those masks. And it caused a depersonalization problem that the teachers then were instructed to redefine as a gender issue, gender confusion. And so the transgender movement came in, strong at a time like that. And then they exhibit, my gosh, look at those tranny things they were doing in the schools. As soon as they had the kids masked up behind plexiglass, and the next thing they're sticking money in tranny panties, these people dressed up like clowns.
Yes.
It really messed up some natural development with by going along with what the people were conditioned to accept and allow to happen for mind control purposes, because everybody was experiencing a level of mind control at that point through the repetitive narrative on the media.
Yes, through Operation, is it Mockingbird
Yeah.
in the media?
Yeah.
So tell me more about the pedophile agenda in the public school system, what you've seen and what you know about that.
Well, it's been allowed to go on for a long time, and people have been conditioned to allow for the sexualization of children, which it again heightens their suggestibility. They become very vulnerable, and the different ways that it's displayed, again, that fake it till you make it's a good one for hiding those vulnerabilities. It's good for being able to heal without someone taking advantage of it, because it's been promoted in the school system and acting like it's a normal thing to do. Children are programmed with what to think rather than to know how to think. They're taught to research social issues of sexuality, and instead of researching true history and doing cross references and going through different books, so that they've learned how to focus on those kind of issues instead of educating themselves in areas that will be applicable knowledge later on.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard President Trump saying, I think he started this year, that he was going to eliminate, I believe he said eliminate the Department of Education?
I hope so. I hope so. I'm so
Yeah.
excited at that, because I
Yeah.
watched when the Department of Education was formed into this power thing over the education system, because my owner in MK Ultra was U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd, who was head of appropriations and decided where the nation's money was going to be spent. He made the states reliant on federal funding so that the Department of Education could dictate what was being taught in the school system. And they put in global education at that point, and it changed names as people became aware. America 2000, Goals 2000, and now it's called Common Core. But it's an indoctrination system that programs kids. History was rewritten in the school system at that point to promote the globalist agenda and take out our constitutional values of freedom and justice and that kind of knowledge. The sovereignty, personal and national sovereignty, was taken out, and instead children were just taught to all be alike. It's just but that's because of a very deliberate action that I witnessed being put into place. I was actually used at the governor's convention in 1984 to promote this global education. And that's in my 1995 testimony for Congress Transformation America. Of course, national security was invoked on it because they didn't want people to know what was going on in the school system. But nevertheless, man, that's just been a topic I've been screaming on ever since I regained my free thought and my free speech, to be able to, warn people as to what was going on. So the whole idea now of dismantling the federal control, get the federal government out of the minds of our children and give it back to the states, because if it's back to the states, it's back to the communities. If it's back to the communities, it's back to the parents. That's where it belongs.
Exactly. And so I think that's just amazing that you watch the Department of Education get formed, which to me brings hope too, because I think people believe that it's been this way forever and it's so entrenched, and it really hasn't. In the scheme of things, it hasn't been there that long. So I believe that, especially if Trump eliminates the whole department and gives it back to the state, which, why not? If Cash is eliminating the FBI, which is a agenda, and the public school system is just as bad, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me to get rid of it. Can you imagine all that we're going to be able to do? I just see ahead this ability, because we have the ability to create and and dream and initiate and implement and build and grow. And don't you just feel like we're on the cusp of just being able to do this like gangbusters?
We're there.
Yeah.
It's taken us so long to get to this point, and then we were almost there. But I remember in 2016 when so many people were awake and aware that we overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in the voting machine to vote in somebody who wasn't Hillary Clinton in her New World Order,
Yeah.
and voted in President Trump then. And I
Yeah.
was so excited. I was like, come on, everybody, now's our chance. And nobody knew that it's up to us. It's up to the people to drain the swamp from the bottom up, not one person from the top down. It's up to us, you
Yeah.
know. So at this point, I think after what happened in 2020 when elections were blatantly stolen in front of all of us with mind control masked as a virus, people woke up that much more and understand what mind control is now. So at this point, I think that we're ready to take responsibility
Yeah.
for our own lives, our own community. And I'm seeing it happening all across the nation as I'm traveling around and speaking out. People are getting out in their communities, talking with each other, eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul, making the difference right where we live. And it's a beautiful thing to see happening. So yeah, what an amazing time to be alive, to
It
see
is.
people.
I know. And I think how enormous this is, like for you personally, because you have been like this, for a long time, voice in a desert, trying to wake everybody up and tell everybody. And it had to felt like a slow drip for quite a while. And then to have 2016 hit, and then everything begin. I mean, it would just have to just fill your heart with joy, I would think, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy, and it's exciting to see people waking up because the change can't happen with just a change of government. It has to be this evolutionary thing within people on a global scale and evolve with the knowledge that's our defense against mind control so that we can protect our children going forward, so that we can live freely going forward, so that we can um, find a way to re-nourish our soil and grow our food and clean up our water, get the
And
fluoride out of the water, clean up our skies, stop those that spraying that's been going on, and we've got a lot that we are going to need to be putting back together, and it's going to take so many of us using our expertise in our own directions of knowledge. You know, it takes us all with vast difference. We were all alike. We're not going to get anywhere in cleaning this up. We have to embrace that difference. How nice that we have people who can do different things.
exactly. It's like pieces in the puzzle, and
I
we all have
know.
gifts and talents, and we'll come together. So, how do you envision you? Um, I mean, you've already done so much for so many people. So, how do you envision what all you'll be involved in? Um, like more of the same and growing, or where do you see? Yeah, what are you going to be doing as we go into this wonderful new world?
I can foresee a need for teaching the teachers and healing the healers, because there's so many people now who have come forward and they're helping. They're the ones opening up these safe houses. They're the ones bringing the survivors in. Yet they need to be fully healed themselves so they don't trigger in the process, or
Yes.
that so they don't display a vulnerability that some predator is going to come in on and destroy the beautiful work that they're doing. So it's a matter of, okay, this is what we can do going forward to protect ourselves so that we can be effective making a difference in going forward. So I'm seeing a big opportunity that direction right now, and it's one that I've been moving into naturally for some time. So wherever people are ready for more information, one more piece of that puzzle, one more bit of truth, that's where I'll be. Anything I can do for the children's sake and for the sake of future generations, everything I do is out of love for humanity, and that's where I'll be using my voice in any capacity that um, that I can.
That's beautiful. I'd share with you that this past weekend, I was in Clearwater, Florida at Michael and Tracy Joe Jaco's Lifeway party. They call it a house party, but so many people came that ended up being in a hotel, of course. Um, but so I was able to give my testimony, and I met so many healers that
Yeah,
I could tell, not all, but some still needed their own healing. And so
yes.
I remember thinking to myself, this is so wonderful that their heart wants to help other people because they survived and came
Mm.
out of it. But then I love what you're saying, because I could see that too, that they need support and assistance and guidance too to finish their healing. I don't know if we're ever finished, but I'll use the word because you're finished. So I'm going to be finished too soon. To finish their healing journey, so that way they're equipped to help others. I think that's wonderful. And I see the need too.
Yeah, definitely that. I think one of the greatest needs that I see in survivors is that they've dealt with their past, but they haven't reclaimed their joy. They haven't reclaimed their innocence. They haven't reclaimed that purity within. When we align with the divine, we have the purity that we had as children. We have that innocence back. We have that capacity to live our life's purpose. It's it's like so many, oh, robbed from me, and they took all that. Well, at that time they did, but it is within us all to find that inner um, ability to align with the divine, to still have that connection with life's purpose, and to be pure and live the love we are, to live it with joy, to live it without fear. And it's easy to live it without fear when we realize that our heightened vibration is what they fear because they can't touch it. That's like we're a light. They're dark. They can't creep in on our light.
Yeah,
Our light is exposing their dark secrets.
that's
So
right.
when we kind of just get that idea, we can overcome the fear and the dread. We can overcome the conditioning of maybe calendar date holidays when horrible things had happened in the past. We
Yeah,
can turn that around and make it our own now because we're free, because we did survive,
yeah,
because we did heal, and
yeah.
because we can realign with the divine and carry that forward with us. And that's a major healing component that once people have that, we're good to go. We're unstoppable.
That's right. It's like we're more than good to go. It's like a force to be reckoned with, Cathy. I mean, and
Mhm.
I've seen that in you, and now I feel it in me, because I always admired you, thinking, my goodness, that woman is a force to be reckoned with. And now I feel like, yeah, yeah, okay, let's
We
take it.
all are.
Yeah, we all are. Exactly. How amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just been a joy to have you on today. And before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to share or say?
Well, just, people can learn more on my website at trance-formation.com. And I would also, just like to say how wonderful this has been. And I think, this is the start of something. I hope we do it a lot more.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
we've got a lot to share.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I feel the same, Cathy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, remember, God is absolutely good.
Okay, great interview there. All right, so check out her website.